Hello. Hi.
An alienation of affections. The reported intrusive sexual and reproductive procedures that are a central aspect of the abduction phenomenon can profoundly affect the intimate life and general well-being of abductees. If the source of this alienation is unrecognized, and conventional psychosexual explanations are the only ones actively pursued, the problems may deepen and the stresses that abductees and their loved ones experience are likely to increase. On the other hand, important therapeutic gains become possible when the apparent source of the experience's dysfunction is discovered. This problem is well illustrated by the case of Jerry. Jerry, who describes herself as an ordinary housewife, had just turned 30 when she called my office in early June 1992. When I first met with her, she consciously reported a struggle with many UFO dreams, abduction encounters, and related experiences dating back to age 7. At her mother's insistence, Jerry had reluctantly dismissed these as nightmares until she saw my name and Harvard University on the credits for the CBS miniseries on abductions, intruders, and figured, well, that person might be a little more trustworthy, and I jotted your name down. Also, at a friend's recommendation, her mother had read one of Bud Hopkins's books and said to Jerry that the accounts of abductions there sounded like her experiences. Our meetings have included 4 hypnosis or relaxation sessions. In addition, Jerry has shared hundreds of pages of journal entries with me, which she began writing several months before she contacted me. These include details of her abduction experiences, poems, and the discussion of extensive philosophical ideas related to the profound transformational process she has been undergoing. Jerry is the second of 4 children, and as a child lived in a rural area near Kansas City, Missouri, where her father worked at a dairy processing plant. Her older brother, Ken, also reported having had peculiar childhood experiences, including seeing unusual white and blue lights outside his window and terrible nightmares of someone entering his room while he was awake. Shortly before she met with me, Jerry and Ken talked about their experiences, and she discovered that he's been plagued with them his whole life. In addition, in her first relaxation session, Jerry described seeing her younger brother, Mark, being abducted with her when he was an infant and she was 7, but she has not discussed her experiences with him. Jerry's parents were divorced when she was 8. Her father remained in Missouri after the separation, and for many years Jerry had little contact with him. Recently, she has had long conversations with him and feels that they are now becoming closer. After the divorce, Jerry's mother, who has worked consistently as a social worker, moved with the 4 children to Macon, Georgia. Jerry remained close to her mother and over the years has consistently confided important experiences to her. During Jerry's later childhood and adolescence, the family moved about a good deal in Georgia. Perhaps we were gypsies at heart, she suggests. She joined the Brownies and then the Girl Scouts and went to summer camp where she took horseback riding lessons and enjoyed riding and being with horses. Later, we discovered, Jerry identified the cults and their dark, almond-shaped eyes with hybrid alien beings. Although her teachers told her that she was a student capable of college work, Jerry left high school at the beginning of the 10th grade when an English teacher imposed college-level assignments she could not handle, and the school refused to transfer her to another class. After this, she held various cashiering and clerical jobs. Given the fact that she has only a 9th grade education, both Jerry and her friends were surprised at the flood of poems and complex information that she first began to write down 5 or 6 years ago. Her writing intensified greatly in November 1991 following a powerful abduction experience. "I don't know where it's coming from," she said. Indeed, the sophistication and articulateness of her writings do seem beyond her educational level. She said that words whose meaning she does not know have come to her as she writes, but she has discovered when she looks them up that they contribute to a consistent set of ideas. Jerry felt that many of her ideas did not come from within herself, but from some other source. She said she was so shocked by communications she received from the beings themselves just after the November 1991 abduction experience that she burned her first notebooks. Jerry's first marriage was to Brad when she was 19 and pregnant with her daughter, Sally. She never loved him, and they were divorced in 1986. Jerry says that her ex-husband played sexual games with the children involving oral sex, but not penetration. Jerry once thought that this was the result of her own aversion to sexuality. "I don't really think that is true any longer," she wrote in a journal entry in January 1993. "He could have had an affair instead. It was something about him that made him choose to do what he did. And I probably chose him because subconsciously I may have picked up on something in him that worked for me. Maybe he was not a threat to me sexually. I could easily get away with not having to deal with my fear of sex with him. He actually accepted the idea of having a sexless marriage." In 1989, Jerry married her second husband, whose name is Bob. He works as a carpenter. She loves Bob and longs to have a normal affectional and sexual relationship with him. In her journal she wrote, "Now I find myself in a much better marriage with a man who has a normal sexual orientation, who desires to have a normal sexual relationship with me. But her abduction experiences have made this impossible. I keep telling myself that my husband is innocent and is not going to hurt me like the beings do." Jerry wrote in January 1993, "I keep telling myself that it is different, that he loves me and is not going to hurt me. I try to keep positive thoughts, but when it comes time to have sex, forget it. All of that goes out the door and I am back being afraid. My feelings during sex are like the feelings I have when I am abducted. I feel frightened, used, and feeling that I have to endure this at other times. She has said that having sex is like going to the gynecologist or being raped. Also, I think that I will be hurt at any time, a feeling of powerlessness and the inability to have any say in the matter. I think that I get a safe feeling when I say no to my husband and he respects that. I am desperate to resolve this problem. I just don't know how to do it." Jerry's fears of intimacy have extended to being touched at all, and she often would drown her sorrow and frustration in alcohol. "I only drank when I thought I might have sex," she wrote in September 1992, assuming that her sexual problem was rooted in early incest or sexual abuse. Jerry and her ex-husband went to 3 different marriage counselors. On one occasion, her nightmares were interpreted as something trying to work its way up to the surface, but nothing useful emerged and Jerry broke off the counseling. Whereas her first husband was frightened by anything out of the ordinary and would not have listened to her talk about her abduction experiences, Jerry felt that her current husband and his family were supportive and understanding, at least at first. Bob was present during our first relaxation session and was powerfully affected by the authenticity of his wife's experience. But disbelief on the part of Bob's family seemed to close in around her, so that Jerry has felt increasingly isolated and alone with her experiences, relying almost exclusively on other abductees, Pam and me, for support. The pulling away of her in-laws has been particularly painful. His family doesn't socialize with me like they used to, Jerry told me in March 1993. So it's painful, because they're the only family I have, and I don't like them to think of me, as the eccentric one, the crazy one. But there's no going back. I have to learn to live with it, she says. All 3 of Jerry's children appear to be involved in the abduction phenomenon. From the time Sally, who was born in 1981, was 6, she has had severe nightmares and will scream out, "Don't touch me. Leave me alone." When she was 9 or 10, she had frequent unexplained and severe nosebleeds. She also has reported seeing UFOs filling the sky in her dreams or imagination, and has remarked to Jerry that maybe the aliens choose specific families. Sally has dreams about the family going onto a deck and seeing a spaceship coming, and of a lot of little creatures surrounding her. In another dream, an alien girl with no hair and a red bow stuck to her head came to her window and asked her to come out and play. She said she went to play with the girl and was shown around a spaceship. Following one of Sally's more recent nightmares, Jerry found her on top of her blankets with her nightgown twisted up and her underwear missing. Sally was groggy and Jerry could not wake her. In June 1993, Sally became frightened when she experienced an unexplained time lapse of nearly an hour while she was timing herself reading a book for school. She looked at the clock, which said 6:02, read for what seemed like a couple of minutes, looked again and saw it was 6:58. How could that be? She asked her mother in alarm, and Jerry groped for some explanation such as she had fallen asleep. But Sally insisted this was not the case. Matthew was born in 1983. He was frightened of the puppets he called Wowos from Sesame Street that came through a window. When the alien puppets were being shown, Matthew would cry and scream and tell his mother to turn off the TV. Bert, one of the puppets, had scary big eyes, Matthew said. He was also frightened by a TCBY yogurt commercial in which a UFO flew down and landed. When this was shown, Matthew ran out of the room and again screamed for his mother to turn off the TV. He spoke of a dream of a pyramid-shaped flying saucer that talked to him and had eyes. Both children reacted strongly to the picture of an alien when Jerry showed them the Hopkins image recognition test cards, HURT, she obtained from a friend who was also an abductee. Sally lost her breath and put her fingers in her mouth. Frightened, Matthew asked, "Has Sally seen that?" "And what did she do?" Colin was 3 in February 1993. His involvement has been intense and is well documented in Jerry's notes, her conversations with me, and a careful evaluation by another child psychiatrist. Jerry also described witnessing his presence during her own abduction experiences. In a journal entry dated August 14, 1992, when Colin was 2.5 years old, Jerry wrote of hearing him crying and talking to himself in the night. She went into his room and found him sitting up in bed. He seemed very awake. He asked for juice, which she brought him, and then started to ramble on about lights outside and owls with eyes. He pointed out the window and said, "See the eyes." Jerry felt so weird because earlier that night I had the strong feeling that they were around. She took Colin upstairs to tell Bob what he had been saying, but he got angry and said he must have had a nightmare. Colin is generally a sound sleeper, Jerry noted, and never asks to sleep with us or even has a habit of waking up at night. But that night, for the first time, he would not sleep in his own bed and insisted upon sleeping with his parents. This behavior continued for several nights, and Jerry wrote in her journal on October 29th that Colin talked often and consistently about these things. When Jerry and Colin were outside together, he would look up into the sky and ask about the stars and the moon, and then talk about the scary owls with the big eyes that fall down out of the sky or floated down. A few times he demonstrated what the eyes looked like by circling his eyes with his hands curved in the shape of a C. One time he went into a lot of action, like running and screaming and saying that they make me eat some food, and they attack a word he actually uses me, especially hurting his toe. Colin also talked about spaceships, planets and stars. One night he climbed in bed with his mother and noticed a small picture of the Earth on the binding of a book. "That's the planet Earth," he said, "and it go away, and the house go away." Pointing at the ceiling, he said, "They say bye-bye, see ya." Then he jumped out of bed and enacted a scene, talking anxiously. "The owls with big eyes fall down and jump and I jump. And there's a spaceship and I come out of the spaceship. My toe hurt," he said, "and the big eyes are scary, Mommy." After this, Jerry actually found blood at the end of one of Colin's toes and a torn toenail. On November 8th, I met with Colin, who was then 2 years and 9 months old, and his parents in my home while his brother and sister played in the backyard. He impressed me as a sweet, lively boy, but he revealed few of his fears. He called the alligator puppet a tiger that liked to bite. Later he would ask his mother, "Why do the tigers go and get you?" and seemed to have replaced the owl with the big eyes with the tiger. He was particularly interested in the large globe in my office and wanted to locate himself on it. I went through the hurt cards with him, and he reacted strongly only to the alien card, which he called a scary man, and became more anxious after this. In her journal on November 15th, Jerry wrote that Colin had cried out, "Ouchie, ouchie," several times during the night. When she and Bob went in to see him, he was sound asleep, but the next morning he said that the monster owls hurt his leg. Climbing into his parents' bed and pointing to the ceiling, Colin said, "What's that big boat? That big boat in the sky?" In her journal entry of January 28, 1993, Jerry wrote that Colin's distressing experiences seemed to be occurring every week or two. On January 25th, when she and Colin were in the bathroom as she was preparing to meet Bob for lunch, he said several times in an angry, frightened voice, "I don't want to go back to the spaceship." Then, standing on the toilet with his teeth and fist clenched and obviously distressed, he said several times, "I get lost. I don't like it." Calming down, he said, "I was born there and fell from the stars." When Jerry asked him to repeat what he had said, he added, "I born on the spaceship and it was dark." Then he became tense again and wiggled around. She asked him how he got onto the spaceship, and he circled his eyes with his hands and said, "The eyes." When Jerry asked him if there was anyone on the spaceship with him, he answered, "Yeah, I see the king. I see the king, and he is God." Jerry wondered where he obtained the verbal skills, seemingly beyond his years, to say these things. On the night of January 27th, Colin came into his parents' room and climbed into bed with them. Jerry found this unusual, as the gate on his bedroom door had been locked and no one remembered having opened it. Meanwhile, a monitor that picked up sounds from the toddler's room started making strange, loud noises, clicking on and off so loudly that Colin asked Bob to turn it off. In light of his continuing distress, and because I wanted to see if a conventional psychopathological explanation for Colin's symptoms might be found in an independent evaluation, I asked a capable and, I thought, open-minded child psychiatrist colleague who was not especially familiar with the abduction phenomenon to evaluate Colin. This doctor met with Colin and his family in February and sent me his report in March. Dr. C did not find much that was remarkable in Colin's history other than the story of his encounters, saw him as a very cute and engaging boy, and discovered little marital tension between Jerry and Bob, except in relation to Jerry's abduction experiences. Colin played with puppets and became interested in a rubber snake that ate fingers and toes. He referred to his own toe being hurt, but evinced little distress about this. Although Dr. C found no explanation for Colin's problems, he wondered if they might be tied to an as yet undiscovered incident in the family, perhaps related to interactions with his brother, who had a history of sexual abuse and with whom Colin had shared a room for a time. He speculated also whether Colin's symptoms might be related to TV images of spaceships and the planet Earth, though his TV watching was restricted. Colin's distress seemed to abate some after this evaluation, and Dr. C recommended no further intervention at this time, although he offered to see Colin further if his fears persisted. One effect of this evaluation seemed to be to divide Jerry and Bob a little further in their perception of the source of Colin's problems. Dr. C's failure to discover a more conventional explanation of Colin's symptoms affirmed Jerry's view that they were related to UFO abductions. But Bob found Dr. C's search for a more conventional traumatic source within the family reassuring, as he has resisted the idea that abduction experiences have a reality, at least where his little son is concerned. In June, upon seeing a book with an alien on the cover, Colin remarked, "He's a rocketeer. He goes up and comes down." Jerry has the sense that abduction experiences and related phenomena have been happening throughout her life. She has always known that the experiences that were so readily labeled nightmares by her mother and others were powerfully real for her. Thus, she has always lived with a strong feeling of isolation and the sense that she had no choice but to deny a major part of my life. The appearance of scoop marks, scars, bruises, and other small lesions following abduction experiences helped Jerry affirm the actuality of what she has undergone throughout the years, before she found a community of experiencers and investigators who were familiar with the phenomenon. Jerry's first consciously recalled abduction experience occurred when she was 7 and still living in Kansas City. This episode will be discussed in detail in relation to her first hypnosis session. Before the regression, she described having seen some sort of unusual light, a spaceship and small, thin grey beings outside her window. When she told her mother of seeing these things, she was told it was a nightmare. But Jerry told her adamantly that I was not imagining or dreaming it, that it was real. "I saw lights, I saw the ship, I saw them," Jerry said in our initial meeting, "and never once did I say it was a dream or a nightmare." The perennial insistence by her mother that these experiences that she felt were real were just dreams made Jerry doubt her own sense of reality. During the first relaxation session, in the course of talking about her abduction experience at age 7, Jerry indicated that she had had earlier encounters. She could not say how old she was, but spoke of being small and that "I wasn't afraid before when I saw them the first time. I thought they were cute, lots of them, were outside the window, just real happy, and encouraged her to come and play." When she was 9 and staying in a motel just before moving to Georgia, Jerry remembers feeling a presence in the room and the frightening sense that someone had just sat on my bed. At age 8, she had an important traumatic and intrusive experience which we explored in our 4th session. A still more disturbing episode for her, which we explored in detail in the 2nd hypnosis session, occurred in Georgia when Jerry was 13. She said she woke up terrified and remembered pressure in the abdomen and genital area, and that she could not move. "In my head I was screaming," Jerry said, but does not know if any sound came out. Somebody was doing something, she recalled, but it was something alien. Although she recalls wondering to herself, is that how sex is done? She knew with great certainty that it wasn't a person. Jerry wrote in her journal about 2 weeks before we explored this experience in the regression how her difficulties with intimacy and sexuality had begun soon after it. She was dating her first real boyfriend, who was about 2 years older than she. Jerry found that she was terrified by the idea of doing anything more than just kissing, whereas she had dated and experimented with petting, and none of it bothered me in the least before this. Her parents were asleep, and Jerry and her boyfriend were in her bedroom. He suggested that they do more than just kiss and hug. Wanting to be rid of her fear of being touched anywhere on my private areas, she allowed him to touch me in between my legs, to put it nicely. But then, I freaked out. I was completely tensed up. My whole body was stiff as a board. I went into a kind of panic attack. I was sweating and shaking and my heart was racing. I looked at my hand and all of a sudden it started to shrink and shrivel up. It started to turn grayish. I was petrified. I don't know what I did after that, but whatever it was, it scared my boyfriend enough to go and wake up my mother. She came in and calmed me down. Jerry did not talk of this incident with anyone, but wrote, "Ever since then, I have had an aversion to sex." In the years that followed, Jerry reported that she had a number of nightmares in which she would awake paralyzed, hear buzzing and ringing and whirring noises in her head, and see humanoid beings in her room. "They were really causing me to lose a lot of sleep," she wrote. There was an episode in 1987 where she saw beautiful glitter and sparkles that seemed to have been thrown into the room, but she screamed in terror as two small beings wearing some sort of shiny outfit or uniform floated above her bed. She believes that she screamed and tried to wake Bob, who was then her fiancé, but he did not budge. As the beings came closer to her, Jerry became still more frightened, and then a blank, and I don't remember anything after that. In a later regression with another therapist, in which she investigated this experience, Jerry said she was deeply moved when twin girls were shown to her, which she feels were her own hybrid offspring. In 1990, Jerry experienced the most traumatic of the abduction episodes. We have not yet investigated this one under hypnosis because of the intensity of the terror and pain associated with it, but Jerry has consciously reported many details of it. She and Bob had just bought a duplex apartment in Plymouth, Massachusetts. She does not remember how the episode began, except that she felt a presence and a tapping on her shoulder. She experienced being taken into a circular room, which was shiny and metallic-looking and contained what looked like equipment. As she was suspended in a standing position and tests were being performed, Jerry recalls that her necklace flew off and fell to the floor. She communicated telepathically with a tall being with blondish hair who appeared to be the leader. When she told him that her necklace had come off, he said he saw it and motioned to a smaller being to pick it up. Jerry was told she could not have it just then because it was contaminated and the beings put it in a plastic-looking pouch. The leader promised that it would be returned to her some other time. Months later, her mother found Jerry had told her about the necklace in the episode, what Jerry believes was the same necklace in a box in Georgia. At first, Jerry was not frightened during this episode and was pleased that she was able to converse with the beings. The leader asked how the medication has been so far, and she made the mistake of saying fine. For after this, a procedure was done to the back of her head above the neck that caused the most excruciating pain she had ever experienced, even worse than childbirth. "I thought they were killing me," she said, and reports screaming, "How could you? You asked me how my medication is." In addition to the raw pain, Jerry felt muscle spasms that were out of her control and extended in rapid succession from her legs to her facial muscles. She screamed for them to stop and was filled with hate and rage. Here I thought they were somehow perfect and loving beings. How could they have done that to me? I was so terrified. I blanked out after that. The next thing I was back in bed, waking up. Although she usually goes to sleep curled up in a self-protecting position on her side, Jerry awoke on her back. Her body was very rigid and straight, her hands were folded on her chest, and her feet were pointing straight up and close together. Still panicked, Jerry tried to wake her husband, but could not do so. She then telephoned her mother in Georgia because I needed to tell someone what had just happened. In one of the 3 episodes in 1991, Jerry reports being taken by taller, more human-looking, fair-skinned, blonde beings to what seemed like the top of a very large building with illuminated equipment in it. She had the sense that she was at a beach or a seashore as she heard the wind and the water breaking, felt a breeze and smelled the sea. High up in this building, Jerry was shown scenes of missiles and other weapons. She felt this was very important. They also showed her some sort of triangular machine that became circular when it spun and had to do with flight maybe. Jerry was assured that she would not ever forget what she was shown on this occasion. The next day she found herself making triangles out of paper or with pencils and toothpicks and spinning them around and around. In November 1991, Jerry awoke, feeling a presence once again. The room appeared filled with an orange-red light that soon receded. The next day her mind seemed to be turned up full volume, flooded with thoughts. Jerry felt as if she were filled with information of a universal sort, soul stuff, unusual for me. After this, as mentioned above, she wrote intensely. Her writings included 100 poems over the next 1.5 months, whereas before this, I never wrote a poem in my life. She found the pressure of these thoughts and writing quite overwhelming and said, "I don't know where it's coming from." In the months prior to our first hypnosis session on August 11th, 1992, Jerry continued to have abduction experiences, including one episode just 3 weeks before, in which she consciously recalled seeing a UFO close-up and being taken by humanoid beings, whose attitude she felt was loving and benevolent, into the ship. There she reported seeing shelves with instruments and vials, being seated on a chair or table, and having a complex dialogue with aliens she felt were beyond what we would think is intelligent or even genius. One of them explained that they came from so far into the future that she would not be able to comprehend. Jerry described saying to herself, "This is great, I can see everything and I am so aware." In her journal she concluded, "I was convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that what I was experiencing was real. They looked at me with their loving and all-knowing smile and simply said, 'Yes.' I then said, 'Well, if this is real, then I am somehow living a double life.' I had a feeling there was a definite reason that I and others like me were not aware of this other reality, at least not as aware as we are about this reality we have here and now." Bob accompanied Jerry to our first hypnosis session. He came as a skeptic, but said that either she's lying to me or it's really happening, and she is not a liar at all. She's the most honest person I've ever met in my entire life. Nevertheless, some measure of Bob's resistance was suggested when he said that he fell asleep through much of the Intruders miniseries, which contained some blood-curdling abduction scenes. Before the regression began, we reviewed several of Jerry's abduction experiences, after which she spoke of her search for a church that would feel more compatible than the Catholicism in which she had been raised. "I kind of floated in and out through religions with friends," she said. A local Protestant church seemed the most comfortable to Jerry and Bob at first, but they wanted to fully change our lives, and, in his words, we took a break from attending and are enjoying it so far. Jerry was especially troubled to find that she could not speak with anyone in the church about her abduction experiences, for they regarded the phenomenon as totally evil, of the devil. God, they said, would never ever make beings that looked like that, which turned Jerry against the church, for in her view the aliens are another intelligence, or another being, another reality. I don't feel they're necessarily bad or good. Once when Jerry told several churchmen about an out-of-body experience she had had, they went straight to a high official who said, "Well, don't ever do that." After this, we discussed Jerry's curiosity about the episode in Missouri when she was 7 years old, and we decided to focus on that. We reviewed in detail the location of her home, which was on a hillside by a little creek and cow pastures, and the arrangement of the rooms in the house. Jerry shared a room with bunk beds with her younger sister. In the altered state of consciousness, Jerry's first images were of her pink-walled bedroom and of standing on the floor in her long flannel nightgown. The house was very quiet, and she reported feeling anxious and pulled to go out of her room and down the hall. She said that a strange bright light filled the room. Jerry had the thought, "I shouldn't be afraid, 'cause I know them." Despite her mounting fear, she felt compelled to come out of her room into the hall and then into the living room. Outside of the house, in the direction from which the light seemed to be coming, Jerry said she saw perhaps 20 or 30 small beings and backed up in terror. She could not move as several beings passed through the window frame into the room. "I wouldn't go out, so they had to come in," she said. Jerry felt that they became impatient with her and just picked me up from her crouched position. "I don't want to go out the window," she said, as the pressure became more intense. To Jerry's amazement, she said the beings took her through the window, and then I went up real fast. As if stopped in the sky, Jerry could see the top of her house, the trees, and the ground below. It kind of took my breath away to go up so fast. There was a big thing above me into which she was taken. Despite the coercion, Jerry feels that she was somehow a participant in this process. But I don't know how, though. Weeping at this point, Jerry saw that 2 of the beings were also floating up her baby brother, Mark, and she worried that he's probably afraid, although he appeared to be asleep. Jerry felt like running away, but realized she was paralyzed kind of up to the waist. Breathing heavily in the session, with her voice quivering, Jerry described the paralysis as being like a painful vibration. Then a tremendous vibration extended into her hands, and "I'm afraid it'll go through my whole body." I reassured her that reliving the experience would not harm her. "The vibration is so strong, I don't understand it," she moaned, afraid that she would not be able to breathe. "I can't do anything. And I'm worried about Mark," she cried. The powerful vibrations seemed to shake Jerry's whole body. "Okay, do it to me, but it's not fair to do it to him," she said. "He's a baby. I just hate them for it." I thought at first they were all right. Crying as she recalled an earlier abduction experience, Jerry said, "I just thought they were cute, and they wanted to come out and play." Jerry said the round room inside the ship into which she and Mark were first taken was dark in the beginning. Then she saw that it was dome-shaped. It's real white. It's got railings. It's got different levels, and they're way up high. The people and the machines are way up high. There were 2 curved tables in the room, one for Mark and one for her, into which each of them was placed. "He seems small in his," she observed. "I just look over at Mark and tell him to be good and not to move around," Jerry said through her tears. "He might fall or something," she worried. Jerry then reported seeing a small, real dark being standing at the railing on the next level, just watching her, and noticed behind her a taller, lighter one she called the leader. He looked older, wrinkly and tight, with a nice face and a permanent type of smile, wore a one-piece, goldish yellow suit, and had a little bit of stringy, yellowish-white hair. His hands were long and skinny. This being communicated her name, Jerry, to her, as if he knew her, which she found frightening, especially as she realized he seemed familiar to her as well. All this made the whole recollection more real to her. Breathing hard and her body shaking, Jerry cried out, "Oh, I don't know if I can do it." Up till now it was just a dream, she said, but if she admitted that this being is or was real, then everything else would be real. Her mother was wrong to have insisted that this experience was a dream, Jerry said. "I've got to stop thinking about what everybody else says. I have to live my own life. I can't keep pleasing my mother," she added. "I have to stand up for what happened," Jerry said, "no matter if people will think I'm crazy or not." The leader asked Jerry if the medication has been okay up till now, which Jerry did not understand. In the session, she then seemed to relive an extremely agonizing procedure involving the insertion of something sharp, like a needle into the side of her head, which evidently had taken some time and against which there was no medication. She cried out desperately and sweated profusely with her body writhing in pain as she tried to hold off the memories. "I think it would kill me," she said. I assured her that this reliving would not kill her and encouraged her to scream as she described the instrument being driven from a high angle down into the side of her neck. "Stop hurting me," she screamed loudly and complained now of spasms and other uncontrollable movements in her legs, which I could see. Panting, Jerry then screamed out in terror, "I can't stop it! Ah! Ah! I hate doing this! Stop it! Stop this!" Jerry's loud screaming and thrashing continued, and she cried out, "They're turning it! They're turning it! Oh, it's inside of me! That's what he stuck inside of me! Aha! That thing! They stuck that thing inside me!" I reassured Jerry as best I could that she would be better when this was over. "It's coming out," she said. "There's a leak. Something's dripping, I feel like, in my throat." She was not sure whether this had been blood, saliva, or what. "They're letting me relax. They're awful. They're cruel. I thought they did something else." Oh, in a whisper, I didn't anticipate this. Jerry recalled that she was told that some sort of tiny object was left inside of her at that time to monitor me with no explanation other than, "We just have to do what we have to do." "I think it's still there," she said. "I don't remember them taking it out." After this, Jerry felt limp and tired. She did not know what was done to Mark, but said, "If they did the same thing, I'd kill them." She recalled little of what followed. The leader left while she stayed for a few minutes on the table. Then she saw flashes and dots of red and yellow light. She did not remember how she got back to her home, nor did she recall being able to tell her mother or anyone else any of the details of the trauma at the time. As the regression came to an end, Jerry speculated on the protective mechanisms that might until now have prevented her from recalling this harrowing experience. "I'm drenched," she said, as she came out of the altered state. "I didn't think you could do that," she said, "to put me out." Her arms and legs continued to feel funny for several minutes after the session was over, and she observed that she had also felt like somebody turning you into a vibrating machine, like somebody put you inside a machine and you were part of that machine. Their medication evidently referred to this vibratory process, but she did not feel it in her neck or head, and therefore the vibrations did not mute the pain. Jerry then recalled that when the anesthesiologist tried to give her a spinal injection to reduce pain during the delivery of Colin, she screamed loudly, for it seemed now to be a similar thing to what she had gone through on the ship. Jerry said that this session upheld her childhood conviction that the alleged nightmare at age 7 was actually a memory of something that must have just happened then and there. Bob, himself somewhat in shock over what he had seen his wife go through, said at the end of the session, "It's a lot to take. At first I wasn't sure, and I saw it bugging her as much as it's been, the pain and everything. I started getting a little worried there. But then he found a way to just kinda sit back. I was glued to the chair at first, but then I had to start getting up." The day after the session, Jerry and I had a follow-up telephone conversation. She expressed shock over how vividly she had relived the abduction experience. "I thought I would just have a few memories," she said. Jerry noted how reluctant she had been to look at the alien beings themselves. This was just too scary for what we see, we know. She was confused about the intensity of her pain and wondered if some elements of her 1990 experience had become confused with the childhood experience just explored. In her journal, she tried to sort out the elements of the experience from when she was 7 and the 1991, but was at a disadvantage because she had not explored the adult incident under hypnosis. In the weeks that followed, Jerry described in her journal various other current and past abduction experiences, related dreams, vivid dreams of UFOs, visions and out-of-body experiences, stimulated by the regression. It was also during this time that Colin began to tell of his experiences, and Jerry recorded these in her journal. 6 days after the regression, she wrote, "I feel that part of a long and heavy burden has been lifted from me since the regression." On August 27th, she saw a beam or pillar of light appear in front of the stairs in her house and thought of calling me, but did not do so. On September 21st, Jerry recorded for the first time a frequent recurrent dream about a horse that she wished to take home in order to care for properly. At the end of the dream, she felt cheated of the opportunity to be with and take care of my horse. In September, Jerry began to ponder her sexual fears and related them for the first time to the traumas of her abduction experiences. It was Jerry's desire to overcome these fears and have a normal sexual relationship that led her to request a second hypnosis session. This meeting occurred on October 5th, and Jerry explicitly stated her wish to find out why she had tried to avoid sex at all costs. Bob's sister, Anna, was present during the session. Jerry elected to explore the episode in which, as a 13-year-old, she had been terrified during the night by pressure in the abdomen and genital area. Before beginning the regression, we recalled the circumstances surrounding the episode, which probably occurred in the fall of 1975, when Jerry was starting the 8th grade. Although she had found the episode frightening, she told no one, including her mother, about it. Under hypnosis, Jerry's first images were of awakening to discover bright white light illuminating her room. She felt a presence that frightened her and thought, "If I'm just real quiet, they won't get me." The beings tried to reassure her by telling her not to be afraid, but this did not work because they're so full of lies. Although I don't want to see them, Jerry noted 2 beings, one behind me and one over here to her side. They told her she must go with them and ignored her protests. "They grabbed me by my arms," Jerry said, and she felt a gentle, soft, like velvet, cold contact. This touch seemed to relax her, and next, Jerry found herself just kind of going with them. Slow going up. It's weird. I don't know how they can do that. With one being on each side of her, Jerry said they floated her out the window like the wall. It's like it's not there. She got that paralyzed feeling again as she was pulled up to a large craft. "This pulling on scares me," Jerry said, as her breathing became more rapid and shallow. She was taken through an opening into this same stupid room where bad things happen. 2 beings were doing something to a table, like getting it ready or something. I just have no control. A taller being she has seen a lot since age 5, but does not like knowing, told her not to be scared, but her fear was building nevertheless. "Don't they understand what they're doing?" Jerry protested. As a small child, she trusted this being, but now felt betrayed by him. "He just doesn't have any patience, and despite her protests, they just put me on the table anyway. You can't argue with them." Jerry felt embarrassed before the aliens as they took off her pajamas. "It's like they think they're doctors or something. I don't think they're doctors." Lying on her back now, Jerry felt somehow more relaxed and less afraid. One of the beings put his hands over her eyes and pressed something that looks like a tube through the wall of her abdomen above the umbilicus. With the instrument still deep within her abdomen, The being took his hands away from her eyes, and Jerry felt more relaxed and also sleepy and tired. Next, she noted that one of the beings was holding a shiny, horseshoe-shaped object with a handle on it, as others bent her knees upward and apart. Crying now, she said, "He's going to cover my eyes again. Why is he doing this? I don't think I want to know. I don't want to know what they did." She told the beings she will tell her mother, but they said that she won't. She wouldn't let them do this if she was here, Jerry lamented poignantly. She said that the beings insisted that she would not tell because she would not remember. At this point, I asked her if it was okay for you to remember now. She said that it was, but exclaimed, "It's not fair," which I, of course, agreed with. "They tried to make me think it was just a nightmare," she complained. "What do they think? I'm just an animal or something?" Jerry's fear mounted once again as she felt pressure inside her vagina. She objected that although the beings kept reassuring her that she would not remember, she has, in fact, remembered what happened. Then she cried and moaned, sobbing, "I just want my mom," as she felt something round inside, a cramped and pinched feeling. "Why are they doing this?" Jerry cried out. "I'm not going to let them do this again." I encouraged her to express her emotions. "Why won't this end? Stop it," she cried. Finally, this part of the ordeal was over. It felt to Jerry as if something had been placed deep within her body, beyond the vagina, perhaps through the cervix. As an adult, she had had an abortion, and this felt something like the DC procedure. She saw the horseshoe-shaped instrument being removed from her body and struggled with the memory of what it held. "I don't want to go any further," she protested. I reassured her of my presence and left the choice to her. "It can't be," she said in a whisper. "Oh, I can't believe it. I'm too young for that. I'm only 13. She wailed, Oh, this can't be. It can't be. I just must be. I don't know." What Jerry saw was a baby that was real tiny, skinny. The beings seemed very pleased with their efforts and showed her this creature, which was perhaps 10 inches long. She could not make out many other details, except that there were tiny hands, and the head seemed big compared to the body. The baby was placed in a clear plastic cylinder-looking thing, where it floated in some sort of fluid. "Why would they do this?" Jerry exclaimed. "I don't understand this. I'm too little to have a baby. They just told me not to worry. I don't have to take care of it." I asked Jerry what feeling of connection she had with this fetus, and she replied, "I think they made me feel it's not mine. It's theirs. It's a part of them." As Jerry lay on the table for what seemed like half an hour, the aliens seemed to be working on the little baby. Then they brought it up close for her to look at. The beings wanted Jerry to feel proud of the accomplishment of producing this creature. But she felt angry, confused, used, and betrayed. Jerry continued to express her intense feeling of shock and disbelief. "I didn't even know I had anything like that in me," she said with a weak laugh. "If they're going to do this, they should at least tell you," she added. I asked if she had been given any further information about what this was all about. "The leader person," she said, "told me that it was beautiful, and that one day I would understand, but it was about creation." "Creation of what?" I asked. "I guess, like a new being, a new race, or a new... I don't know. He didn't really say specifically. He just said that at a point in time of their own, she would know. They said it was beautiful, it was wonderful, and just to trust that it had to do with creation." At this point, Jerry began a debate with herself as to whether to tell me the leader's name, which she apparently knew. To speak it, she said, would make him more real, give him a stronger identity. Once when she was writing, he seemed to speak to her and asked, "Do you deny?" I think he was wanting me to admit him. I think he wanted me to remember. The name that came to her was something like Mulana. As the session neared the end, Jerry reported being helped to get dressed, but had only real fuzzy information about how she returned to her house and came back into her bed. She awoke on her back and at the time recalled only that a being had stood over her, put pressure on my stomach, and was doing something down on my private area. It seemed as if her conscious memory had condensed the beginning of the abduction experience and what occurred on the ship. Reviewing her experience, Jerry noticed that she had had no control whatsoever over what occurred. As in the earlier childhood abduction experience explored in the first regression, Jerry felt that she wouldn't have been able to handle it were she to have recalled consciously the traumas of this episode. But now she felt that I was supposed to tell somebody, and they initiated that process. As she came out of the altered state of consciousness, Jerry felt relaxed, but continued to express her indignation toward the aliens. They have no right to do what they do, and they're pretty arrogant about it. Just to take, don't they know? Don't they know us well enough to know that a 13-year-old doesn't do that? It's for their purposes. They're being pretty selfish. But at the same time that she felt she was a tool for their design, Jerry also felt that she was participating in a plan that came from a higher place. My feeling is it's not just them, Jerry spoke then of Bob's increased resistance to accepting the reality of her experiences. Largely, she believed, because of the implications for him of having his little son, Colin, involved. She recalled then that she and Colin have a similar inherited deformity of one of their toes. Colin complains that the owl bit my toe, while Jerry has also had the experience of having her deformed toe examined. She associated then to a silvery blue flash she had noticed one night recently as she was going to sleep and saw DNA in large bold letters and heard the phrase "the marker trait," which has meaning in genetics research which Jerry was completely unfamiliar with. We talked about the impact of this abduction experience on her sexual life. Jerry was raised with an accepting attitude about getting married, having sex, having babies, she said. Sex means getting married, having babies, caring, loving, and sharing. But obviously, they, the aliens, don't do anything like that. They have no respect for feelings or love or relationships. When she has sex now, it revives traumatic abduction intrusions like the one we had just relived. When I have sex, that's how it feels. It feels like they're doing that. It feels like I have to just grin and bear it. When I'm having sex, it's just like that. It's like I relive it every time. I transfer, I know I do. I have no control over this. I never knew where that feeling came from. At the end of the session, Jerry had me look at a small, circular, indented scar on her abdomen, which she associated with the procedures just recalled. Until this session, she had not known where it came from, but seemed to feel confident that it was the result of one of her abduction experiences. I was unable to discover from Anna, who seemed a bit stunned, what her reaction was to this session. In the days that followed this regression, Jerry had a difficult time. She had trouble sleeping, cried a lot, and searched unsuccessfully for an alternate explanation. Anna, she said, was torn by what she had experienced in the session. She could not believe it, but had said to Jerry, "I know you're not lying." Anna's skepticism made Jerry's attempt to integrate the experience more difficult. Meanwhile, she had consulted another therapist who lived nearer than I to where she lived, in order to pursue her abduction material more actively. But the brief hypnosis sessions with him, which continued through the fall and winter, appeared to compound her trauma rather than help her. "I have more memories coming to me than I can handle," she wrote in her journal in January. The therapist would push her to move ahead faster than she felt ready, urged her to do weekly regressions, and threatened negative consequences if she refused to comply. She felt overwhelmed and found it helpful to attend my monthly support group. I also urged her to slow down and then to break off the sessions with the other therapist, as little integrative work seemed to be accompanying the uncovering that was occurring. Jerry faithfully recorded the experiences of the fall and winter in her journal. Her fears for Colin, as recorded above, resulted in the evaluations already described. She herself had had several dreams of nuclear war in which there was general panic, and she heard herself say, "It must be Armageddon." In one of the dreams, she looked out into this vast nothingness and saw a UFO, and it was slowly moving along with a beam of some sort shooting down onto the land. Flooded by memories of abduction experiences that were coming up in the regressions with her therapist, Jerry wrote of the shattering of defense mechanisms and the extraordinary nature of a threatening experience that can recur unpredictably at any time. "I wonder if anyone who is not an abductee," she wrote in early January, "could possibly comprehend what it means to not have any idea when the next abduction could be. And I would like to know how the mind works when a person is subjected to continual trauma and knows that it may not end." At the end of January 1993, Jerry had what she called a horse dream, in which she was looking for my horse in a laboratory-like room with pools of water in little rectangular cubicles or tanks. When she looked at these, it made her feel sad. It was almost pathetic. She noticed one of the horses closest to her. When it turned its head toward her, it looked at her with big dark eyes. These little horses were all hooked up to some wires in the water. They all had long arms and legs, and they were all very skinny. Their heads look as if they couldn't hold them up, even if they wanted to. But this one turned its head and looked directly into my eyes. I am not sure how I felt when it did that, but I felt that in its eyes was an awareness that reached beyond what I would imagine it would be capable of. On March 4th, Jerry came to see me, accompanied by a close friend who was also an abductee. The purpose of the session was to review what was happening in her life and plan for the future. Jerry talked of her feelings of ostracism and isolation, especially the pulling away of Bob's family, and the need for a community of understanding around the abduction phenomenon. She recalled now unexplained losses of fetuses that both her mother and sister had experienced. Further discussion of the dream of the little horses led Jerry to link them with another dream of hybrid baby girls with which she felt a strong bond. "You're our mother," the girls had said, and she felt the same bond with one of the little horses, which she now thinks represented a human or hybrid infant. Jerry sought a third relaxation session because there were still, as she put it, a few of her abduction experiences that keep bothering me. She particularly had in mind the painful 1990 episode in which I screamed and screamed and screamed, and the 1991 encounter from which she could still recall the smell of the sea and hearing the waves on the beach. As it turned out, her psyche chose an incident in September 1992, which has had an especially profound impact on her intimate life. We met on May 27th, and Jerry came alone. Before beginning the regression, Jerry talked of the increasing estrangement she was feeling from her husband's family, which made her decide to stop talking to them about her abduction experiences unless they asked. Her mother-in-law, she said, can't accept it at all. She thinks if I'm a good little girl and I say my prayers, it'll all go away. But Jerry wondered what did in fact affect her abduction experiences, for she felt as if she were just fair game. She had a sense, however, that her fearfulness makes the experiences worse. One time she reported being more relaxed and not fighting, and that one was painless. They were doing things. They did something to my arm that made my arm swell up. They were showing me things. I guess I felt more of the communication, more able to talk to them and ask questions, and I don't remember any real answers. Jerry does not feel that the beings want to cause me fear and pain and agony, and deep down inside, I think that what they're doing is somehow necessary. It has to do, she said, with races, beings, or whatever coming together to make another creation. This was very important, she said, and as a single person, compared to this big, huge thing going on, I should look beyond myself and know that it's for the greater good. At the same time, Jerry noted that over the past year, she had learned to think more independently. I feel I shed some of my old beliefs, she said, and she no longer blindly follows someone else or some organization. As a Catholic, she had been raised to feel that she was being disobedient to God when she followed my own instincts or asked questions that challenged church belief. As we prepared to begin the regression, Jerry lay on her side in a curled-up position rather than supine, as is more usual in relaxation sessions. She explained then that this is her habit at night as well. I'm thinking I can shrink up and cover up and pretend I'm not here. To her surprise, Jerry's attention lighted not on the abduction experiences we had talked about, but on an episode in September 1992 that she described in which a golden light, so bright it hurt her eyes, had filled her room. The alien beings, she said, seemed to float down and through her screen door and into the room. They're just really odd-looking. Their eyes. I just hate 'em. I hate 'em, she said. It's like they just look right through you. They go inside you, which gave her a really weird, unnerving feeling. She avoided looking at them because it's hard to put in words. It's as if I'd lose myself and don't feel like I have any control. Once again, the beings reassured her telepathically. I don't think I'll ever get used to their way of doing things, Jerry said. I don't think I'll ever get to where I feel comfortable going through the window. She does not like the sensation and is curious how they can manipulate matter, solid matter. Jerry was frightened again as she was taken through the window into a familiar enclosure. I know this room, she said. She had mixed feelings toward the leader, whom she feels she knows. He talks to me. The other ones don't. But she had foreboding feelings about what would happen when he was there. As her fear mounted, I suggested a device for reducing her anxiety. She would split her consciousness so that Jerry 1, allied with me, would observe Jerry 2 in the room. Using this approach, Jerry 1 observed that Jerry 2 was naked on a table, unable to move her arms and legs, in a room lined with lots and lots and lots and lots of rectangular-shaped containers, like drawers in a cabinet, with hardly any space in between. Inside of these drawers, or incubators as she called them later, were hundreds of, I don't know if you can call it babies or not, but little, just, I guess, fetuses. To the far right and towards the bottom was a little fetus, or baby Jerry believed was mine. Our device was becoming more difficult now, for Jerry found I can't be emotionally detached. This has been going on since I was 13, she said, and estimated that perhaps 50 procedures involving implanting or removing something vaginally had occurred over the years. It goes in waves, she said. I go for a while, and nothing happens, and then they come and it seems like it's all the time. Quite a few times, she does not know how many, she recalled being taken to see what appeared to be hybrid beings. That's the part I hate the worst, she said. I think of them, the little ones, as horses. Do they look like horses? I asked. Just their eyes do, and skinny, you know, long-limbed. Like colts, she said. That's how I think about them. She recalled particularly the twin girls she felt were her offspring, but does not remember being brought to see them until they were as tall as Colin, who was now 3. Jerry believed that during the particular episode we were exploring, an embryo was placed inside her body. She thought this because the episode was relatively brief. Those are the quick ones. She said she has been given information from the aliens that they take DNA from a human male. The sperm could be from my husband or someone else, and combine it with an egg. After combining the male and female germ substance, she said, the aliens alter the embryo in some way, perhaps adding a genetic principle of their own. This altered embryo is then reinserted into the female body, as in Jerry on this occasion, for gestation. Returning to her account of this abduction experience, Jerry described how the being separated her legs, like in a regular gynecologist's office. But because she was paralyzed, no stirrups were needed. Then a long tube was inserted in her vagina, and she felt a pinch. She said she knew this was one of the times that an embryo was inserted into her, because I've been through this before, and I recognize the routine. The leader had taken an embryo out of one of the drawers and brought it over to her. The other way, when they remove a fetus from her body, is worse than putting it in, for then she feels painful cramping. Jerry related the violation she experienced during the abduction to not wanting her husband to touch her. She was beginning, she said, to be aware of how I came to associate both of those, of how the rape-like abduction experiences had interfered with her intimate life. They've ruined that, she said. I don't know what making love is, because I'm always still too wound up in being tense and fearful of pain, and I associate sex with pain. Then she added, I don't think that that's their intention to ruin my sex life. Before concluding our exploration of this episode, I asked Jerry if there was anything else she recalled. I wish you wouldn't ask that, she said, and added, I don't like it when they touch me. They touch me all over. Sometimes they do their little feely touches, and I just block that out too. I'm just connecting from when my husband touches me, just anywhere. I just push him away. It's not because I don't love him. I love him, and I just never knew what it was. I never understood it. I just feel so bad, she said. He's a very, very loving person, and he loves to be held and touched, and I can't do that. I'm afraid to be touched. I just want to know what it feels like to be comfortable with that. We worked further to distinguish the seemingly coldly analytic procedures of the alien beings from her husband's loving, caring attention. They're just doing what they have to do with no respect for my feelings, and he has total respect for my feelings, she said, but I kinda just react the same way. Until now, it has sometimes felt wonderful to say no to her husband because it felt as if she was somehow stopping the aliens through him. I'd probably cry for days and days and days, Jerry said, if she could enjoy being held lovingly by her husband. We talked further of her loneliness and her hunger to be held and touched. Safe, warm, kinda like when my mum used to hold me. Boy, did I used to love that. I haven't let that happen in a long time. They're coming between us, she said. An alienation of affection, I observed, which delighted her. I asked Jerry if she wanted to report anything further from this episode. She described being taken down a dark corridor to another tiny room with a table she was pulled onto by the alien hands despite her resistance. After several beings stared at her midsection, she became paralyzed again, and they did some painful poking of her feet, right arm and right hand. The tall one came over to her, and she felt gratitude toward him, for he helps her by reassuring and touching her, sometimes on the shoulder. I don't mind him touching me, Jerry said, but I don't like it when he looks in my eyes because it goes like inside me. It's just too what? I don't know. It's like someone just crawled right inside you and knew everything about you. I just kinda lose myself, and he kinda just gets in there, and I just don't like it." "Is there a way that you do like it?" I asked. "Yeah, sometimes I guess I do," Jerry replied. "It's just kind of like I get ashamed about it because it's a sexual thing. It's not me. It's him," she added, "and there's no controlling it." As Jerry's feet were being poked with needles, she was asked to look at a screen close up to her face that seemed like a TV monitor. She was angered to see that on the screen were home movies showing her dancing with Colin. One of the beings was staring at her, observing her reactions to witnessing this intimate family scene. She became angry over this blatant invasion of privacy. At this point, Jerry noted that there was some sort of machine on one of her toes, making it numb. This was the one that had a mild non-alignment like one of Colin's toes, squished up and folded under. "I passed on this defect from my toes to him," she noted, and the being seemed curious or studying that. Next, she said she was shown a picture or painting of Jesus in a white robe. Again, the beings wanted to study her reaction to seeing this image, but then Jerry became sleepy and does not remember anything else. She returned to the room where her clothes were, and she slipped them on with the being's help because she was so sleepy. She then had a picture of floating through the big tree in the backyard and right through the window into bed, still feeling pain in her hand. Bob was asleep and evidently had been through the entire experience. Before concluding the session, we reviewed once more the ways that Jerry had condensed her abduction experiences with human intimacy. Her ex-husband had insisted that she must have been sexually abused, and we went through marriage counselors, trying unsuccessfully to discover a human perpetrator. Jerry believed that if they had been able to discover someone else like my father or my stepfather, she would have had far less difficulty dealing with her sexual conflicts. Jerry's conviction about the reality of these experiences was increased by the fact that her younger brother has the same problem as she does with physical intimacy. His poor wife cries and cries. Jerry said, "He won't touch me. He won't let me touch him." Their little girl had something happen, I think. Her older brother's daughter told a story of a light in the window and in the living room is where the monsters come in. At the end of the session, Jerry said, "I really do think that they do exist. They are real, and they are interacting with us, obviously not in any form that we're used to. There's a reason they're doing this," she added. She feels that they are making, whatever you want to label it, another whole civilization. She said she does not know whether they're going to take it and place it somewhere else, or it's going to be introduced here. Jerry, like many abductees, has dreams of the world as we know it coming to an end, and relates her breeding role to this eventuality. We scheduled a fourth relaxation session for 5 weeks later, July 1st, to continue Jerry's effort to separate affection and sexual intimacy with Bob from the memories of her abduction experiences. Her awareness of the seeming source of the problem had helped a little, but she still had to keep telling myself over and over again that he's not them. Before beginning the relaxation session, Jerry and I worked out a strategy whereby we agreed that during the session, I would specifically reinforce the distinction between traumata we might uncover that, according to her reported experience, had been perpetrated by the aliens from the memories of her intimate contact with Bob. This therapeutic strategy appealed to Jerry, especially as family members were telling her that she should just accept that's the way you are, and Bob had started to be supportive, accepting that maybe I'm just going to have to not want sex. We began the session by focusing on the sexual encounter that Bob and Jerry had had on Saturday afternoon. "I seemed to be more comfortable during the day," she explained. 5 days before, Colin had been asleep, and the older children were told not to disturb them. I asked Jerry to remember that afternoon, and to report any intrusive thoughts that came up at the time or might occur now. Flashes of memory came to her from an incident at age 8 when she and several family members were returning during the night from visiting her aunt. Jerry had fallen asleep and awoke to discover that the car was stopped in the road. She became frightened as she reported seeing a face in the window. It's right there, right close, and a greyish, metallic-looking craft hovering nearby just above the ground with lights coming out of the bottom of it. Her mother, who had been driving the car, one of her brothers, and her sister seemed to be asleep. The being's face had like devil eyes or something. Soon Jerry found that her feet and legs felt like when they fall asleep, and she could not move them, while she kept hearing in her mind, "It's all right." Next she felt like a bee bite, which caused a funny feeling to run down her left shoulder and upper arm, and caused her to go to sleep. When she woke up, Jerry said that she found herself lying on her back, apparently alone, in a dark place she did not recognize. She was so afraid that her teeth were chattering. The being she had seen outside the car was in my face again, just looking at me. "He must be the devil," Jerry said, "because I just think he's so ugly." The being told her that he's just going to do a few things and then I can go home. Then she felt a squeezing sensation at her throat, as if from the alien's hands, and she was afraid that he might kill me. After this, another being pushed her over onto her side and seemed to be staring at her back. Although her fear of what the beings might do was intense, Jerry felt, "Like I know them. I don't trust them," she complained, "because you just never know what they're going to do." "I don't like them touching me," she said, as she reported being touched repeatedly all over the back. It felt like many little needles and a little pinch. Her terror derived from the fact that unlike going to the doctor's office when they tell you and you know what's wrong and your mum's with you, in this situation, I don't know what's going on, and I feel that any moment they're going to hurt me. Then Jerry reported that they roll me back over onto her back and did a lot more just looking. She felt temporarily better because he's not doing anything, but I kinda got a feeling there's something going on behind me. Jerry felt intense embarrassment as she told me that the leader pushed her legs into a pulled up and apart position to check me, and he brings a light, this really bright light, and I'm thinking, what are they going to do? I don't like this. It's just really, it's okay to, poke at me and everything, but I don't like that. That's my private area, and I don't think they should be doing anything there, and I don't think my mom would like that. At first, they were just looking inside her vagina, but then they put something in there that was kinda like when I get older, the gynecologist, kinda like that. This procedure was painful, and Jerry screamed in terror for her mother, but that doesn't stop him. It was over real quick, and after all this looking and checking, the being who performed it looked up to the leader and said no, or gave some sort of negative response to a question of his. Jerry interpreted this to mean she was not yet ready for their reproductive procedures. This vaginal examination seemed to Jerry to be part of an overall checking the beings did. This experience was mortifying for Jerry. She felt like a rag doll afterwards, like I don't have any control over my body. In this instance, Jerry could describe the strange hooked light that was put inside of her, but she was not able to recall the actual sensations that she felt at the time. "I wouldn't know the words like rape at age 8, she said, or something, but it's like that. I asked Jerry if she had ever known whether she had a hymen, but she said that as a child and adolescent she did not touch or examine her genital area, perhaps, in part, because of the trauma of this experience. Jerry was always very modest about her body, and her mother would sometimes comment on this. Then I asked her explicitly whether there had been an anal examination. She had not intended to tell me, because that's worse than the other and occurred before the vaginal exam. I just skipped past it. I just skipped past it, she said. I asked what made it worse. Just doing that, she said, was completely disgusting and more uncomfortable. At this point in the session, Jerry was struck powerfully by the ways in which her reactions to Bob's advances were patterned by the scenarios of her abduction experiences. She made a circular motion with her hand to describe the way in which her abduction material was triggered by being touched by him, and how intensely the alien and human experiences had become interwoven. For example, when Bob touches her on the back, it brings back the touching probing of the aliens. When he starts with the touchy-feely stuff, the tape starts running in my head, she said. When he spreads her legs prior to intercourse, it brings back the memories of the aliens pushing her legs apart on the table. The act of intercourse is equivalent in her mind to the assaultive genital probing on the ships that she cannot stop. And when she says no and stops Bob, it is as if she is stopping the aliens, even though I know I can never really stop them. We then derived a strategy for their intimate interaction that would maximize the distinctions between Jerry's abduction experiences and her relationship with Bob. First, they would discuss and agree in advance that she would initiate the forms of foreplay and intercourse after a good deal of affectionate talk, and she would have the option of stopping their encounter at any point without guilt. She would direct Bob's touch, which would be slow and smooth, focusing on her breasts, which the aliens do not touch, and would contrast the rapid, needle-like touching of the beings. She would initiate genital touching, and when Bob's penis was erect, she would mount him, take him into herself, and be the more actively moving partner, which she assured me he would like. At every step, she would be in charge and in control. At the end of the session, I summarized for Jerry the two parts of the strategy we had discussed: a psychological emphasis on distinguishing in her mind between the alien and human experiences, and an action strategy that would reinforce this distinction. She looked forward to initiating the plan. I also stressed how especially traumatic the anal and genital penetration of her body that she had experienced at age 8 must have been. For at this age, even more than at 13, a child has no way to understand or consciously record such experiences, for the psyche is simply too immature. Thus, the experience becomes deeply buried in the unconscious, affecting later feelings and behavior in ways that the person has no way to comprehend. 5 days after her last relaxation session, Jerry stopped by my office after another appointment she had in the hospital. She looked well and happy and said the strategy was working. 2 days later, Pam called her and she said that whatever we did was totally successful. She tried what we had suggested with Bob, expecting to be anxious, but it didn't show up at all. He did everything she asked of him, relaxed, and enjoyed her initiatives. She is certain now that what has been upsetting her has nothing to do with him, for otherwise their sexual activity would have bothered her. She was elated that none of her old disturbing feelings returned. Bob is very happy about the change. I can't believe it, he said. Several months later, the change was still sustained. Discussion Jerry's case demonstrates a broad range of abduction phenomena. She reports having experienced complex intrusive reproductive procedures on the alien craft, including insertion and removal of what appear to be fetuses of some sort, and has described encounters with hybrid entities. At the same time, she has undergone the intense personal growth and philosophical and spiritual opening that often seem to accompany abduction experiences. Interestingly, her philosophical and poetic writings antedated her work with me and cannot therefore be attributed to our relationship or interaction. All 3 of her children, the products of 2 marriages, seem to be involved in the abduction phenomena. The representation in her psyche of the hybrid babies as horses or colts, unconscious at first, reminds us of the variety of animal forms, including deer and different birds, in which the alien beings may appear to abduction experiencers. For Colin, the aliens were owls from the sky. This complex symbolization may be a product of the psyche's unconscious power of disguising threatening elements, or may be induced by the seeming mind-altering powers of the aliens themselves. Another possibility would be that some sort of deeper connection of the alien beings with the animal spirits themselves can occur, similar to the human-animal connections that are familiar in shamanic practices. Jerry's abduction encounters, beginning in childhood, have been deeply traumatic for her, and their intrusive, rape-like, reproductive and sexual elements were buried deeply in her psyche. Because the material from these experiences remained unconscious, she was unable to distinguish the physical aspects of human intimacy and sexuality from her alien experience traumata. As a result, Jerry was unable to enjoy or even tolerate physical contact with her husband, with whom she had a mutually loving relationship. The uncovering of core material from her abduction-related traumatic experiences through 4 long hypnosis sessions allowed Jerry to psychologically separate human from alien reproductive and sexual activity, and permitted us to devise strategies for reinforcing the distinction between them. Jerry and Bob were then able to enjoy a satisfying sexual relationship. It is difficult for someone who has not been present during these hypnotic regressions to appreciate the emotional intensity of the traumatic experiences an abductee like Jerry has undergone. Her verbal expressions of rage and outrage and bodily writhings are something to behold. But over and above these abreactive expressions, which permit the integration of the traumatic memories, Jerry's case also illustrates well the other dimensions of abduction trauma: the lifelong personal isolation, the philosophical disbelief, and the fact that new episodes may befall the experiencer and his or her children at any time. Jerry is particularly eloquent in speaking of this last element. She concluded a poem titled Regression, written during the winter of 1992-93, with the lines, "This wonderful technique gives relief to traumas past, with one catch although, will it end with the last? Because unlike other victims of rape, incest, even war trauma, we're not relieved of our continuing, unrelenting other-world melodrama." Despite the great suffering Jerry's abduction experiences caused her, she, like many other abductees, holds to the view that there was something of great value, a creative dimension, a definite reason for the abduction process. Perhaps the creation of a new race of beings in which she was participating. It is difficult to know whether such ideas represent an authentic realization by the abductee herself, are possibly implanted by the alien beings, or result from a kind of identification with the aggressor. Jerry, like many abductees, has opened her mind and heart to important philosophical and spiritual concerns. These are expressed most fully in her writings. In a November 1992 journal entry, she told of a dream of the future destruction of the Earth through nuclear war. That such concerns for the Earth and its fate predated our work is made clear by entries from December 1991, 6 months before she called me. Writing as if she were receiving information from another troubled and perplexed source or voice that was speaking to her, Jerry described the beauty of the Brazilian rainforest, but followed this with the concern that it was dying a very slow death. Why was this most beautiful place being destroyed? She continued, "You started to investigate further, and you discovered that it was not the place that was dying. It was the inhabitants of the place that were killing it. You then were very concerned about this, and continued exploring the rest of the Earth and its inhabitants. The very same thing happened everywhere you went. You then decided something must be done. But what? How? Does humankind have that much hatred for his future that he would destroy it? She wondered. Jerry's writings include consideration of a vast range of existential matters, including the nature of time, space, and the universe itself, the great cycles of birth, death, and creation, the mysteries of truth, spirit, and soul, and the limitations of material science. She believed that she was to write a book about universe, soul, God, and eternity, based on the ideas that were coming to her, and organized her communications into chapters. Sometimes she seemed to pause in awe before the power of the information she was receiving and the implied responsibility that accompanied it. In a December 1991 entry, she wrote, "But why would you pick an ordinary housewife to do such important work as this? And who is going to understand and even buy the book?" The answer she received was that she had chosen this role herself. In an entry dated November 22, 1991, Jerry wrote from the standpoint of the archetypal creative force of the universe.